Hello, everyone. I'm Vin Ebenu here from the WOBM newsroom, here with somebody who's not a stranger to our newsroom and our studios. It's Alicia Cook. Certainly not to the Toms River area.
No, definitely not.
We're a Toms River native, so from the shore, out with a new book, the third in your series, right?
This is my third book, but it's the second poetry collection. So it's a follow-up to stuff I've been feeling lately.
So, and you had heroin is the worst thing that ever happened to me in there as well.
That was a collection of essays, yeah.
Okay,
you have a good memory.
I try to.
You have a good memory, yeah.
So, in this book, the last couple of books kind of focused on your story, the story of others you spoke with in the area and across the country, speaking with Congressman MacArthur on drug addiction, recovering from drug addiction, that recovery is possible. But this book seems to expand not just on that, but on a lot of other social issues as well that a lot of other everyday people are facing. So right off the bat, what are some of the similarities to this third book, and what are some of the differences, or I guess, what are you expanding on in trying to get a message out there?
Okay, so my new book, I Hope My Voice Doesn't Skip, it focuses on the human condition overall. It focuses on grief, loss, not just loss as in, a relationship breakup, but if you lose a friend or something like that. It talks about the effects of drug addiction, but more implicitly. So if someone lost someone another way, they would be able to relate to the piece. There's a musical component to this book. So 8 of the poems have actually been recorded into proper songs by 8 different musicians, some of which are New Jersey natives or New York natives. But yeah, the biggest message of this book is that recovery is possible. And I'm not just talking drug recovery anymore. I'm talking about recovery from anything, whether it be your first heartbreak or a death in the family or a loss of a job or anything like that. And the dedication of the book says, this is, we are all recovering from something. This is for all of us.
So in part it's mental health, but in another way, it's also the struggles of everyday people who may not, have, an addiction to drugs or to alcohol, that they're having their own personal struggles that they're trying to overcome, or their own personal battles.
Yes.
How did you come up with the title, My Voice Doesn't Skip?
Okay, so
My Voice Doesn't Skip.
My first poetry book is called Stuff I've Been Feeling Lately, and it was designed as a old school cassette mixtape. So I knew for my next poetry book I wanted to keep with the music theme, and I like to think I'm an old soul, and I love records, and I love the sound that a record, you just can't get that, I think, any other way. So I designed it like a record. And I originally, the title came to me instantly. I can't even tell you how it did, but the whole idea that like CDs or records, they could skip. But also the last poem of the book is called I Hope My Voice Doesn't Skip. And it's about speaking up when you're afraid to is probably the most important time to. And it's almost okay that, you might be like stammering through your words as long as you say what you need to say. So a duality there.
And I know stigma is, a word we've discussed in the past, especially related to drug addiction, and what's associated with it, not just for the person who's using, but their family and their friends as well. But I think that word gets associated with a lot of different things and a lot of different feelings or pains that people are going through in life that, just because one thing is associated with it, that doesn't mean it's true. So what is the message you want to get out of that? That is there like the same message that you could expand across no matter what anybody's facing, that could overcome a stigma associated with their mental health issue or their addiction to drugs or alcohol or something else?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the more we talk about it, the less stigma will exist. So the more we are brave and we talk about what we're going through, be it drug addiction or any kind of mental health issue. My book covers a lot on depression, anxiety, substance abuse, loving someone with substance abuse, death, grief, things like that. So there's stigma attached to every single one of those in some way or another. And I absolutely believe that the more people that come out and speak openly and honestly about what they're going through, the less chance stigma has to remain.
No, and a lot of times not just the drugs, the alcohol. There could be a lot of different things going on, whether somebody has mental illness or not, that could all be just coming together at once and could really cause somebody to have a mental breakdown, somebody to really kind of go off the ledge there. What would your recommendation be, or maybe through your book, of somebody who's kind of battling multiple things at once, whether it's addiction to drugs and or alcohol? Maybe they've got something going on in their personal life with a family, a friend, a relationship. Is there I can't imagine there being an easy solution to any of that, but is there a way people can kind of climb toward seeing the light again and trying to find, some clarity in their life to overcome all these obstacles at once?
Right. Well, since I'm not a mental health professional, the first thing I would say is if you're really struggling, it is beneficial to go talk to someone, a mental health professional, a therapist, anyone like that, your family. Open conversation and developing coping mechanisms for anything you're going through is vital to overcoming. I was not in a great mind space in 2016 when my first book came out. The first book, Stuff I've Been Feeling Lately, is a little more dark, but also still remains hopeful. So I kind of had to manifest my own hope during that time. So what I learned to do through speaking to a professional and through open conversations with my family and friends was I learned to still find the good in things, even if it was just a little sliver of light, like a glimmer of hope. And I would hold on to that because we are all going through a lot of stuff, especially these days. Like no one's life is easy. We all have our stuff. And what I basically did was, okay, I had a terrible week, but let me find one good thing that happened. Oh, my nephew turned 4, things like that. And I clung to that because as dark as it may seem, I just think with the right help and with the right assistance and support around you, I just want people to know that, like, it's not the end. It will get better. It might get worse before it gets better, and that's terrifying. But I do believe that it could get better. I'm a completely different person mentally now than I was 2 years ago. And I credit that a lot to writing and self-expression, but also because I was honest with myself and I knew, like, I can't save myself alone at this point. So I need to ask for help, and that's what I did.
How would you advise somebody who's maybe going through some of the struggles that you went through, or the obstacles you overcame, or somebody else who's going through another set of issues or problems themselves, that maybe things do get worse before they do get better, and that there's no reasons to kind of lose that hope or lose that sight that there is an ending that ends happy for everybody, that you can overcome all these hurdles that are in your life, overcome an addiction to drugs, to alcohol, to something else that's going on in your life that's kind of blocking you from living a normal, happy, clean, healthy life where you're not constantly worried about something. Where do people find hope, and how do they hold on to it, even when everything seems dim?
Everyone's different, but I just the worst thought anyone could have is this world would be better if I wasn't here. That's the worst thought. I feel like if you get that thought, it's red alert, scary stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people's minds go there where, like, I'm not making anything better. This world might be better off without me. And I, even though I don't know the whole world, I feel safe to say that everyone is loved by at least one other person. And if this person wasn't in this world anymore, that one person would be devastated. And I just want people to know that, like, you being here, your voice matters, your presence matters, and I don't know, like, I know what it's like to be that dark and think it's never going to get better. I know what that's like, and you just need to reach out and say it out loud, and I just hope that they find the help that they need.
How do you get the message out there that recovery is possible as well, not just to overcoming a drug addiction or something else going on, that recovery from whatever it is that somebody's going on, that recovery is possible despite all that's in front of you, all the obstacles that somebody may be facing, that in the end, you can still seek help, and that there are people there, your family, your friends, that will help you find recovery. How do you get somebody past that, maybe that mental block that saying, all right, well, there is no hope, there is no way, I'm going to find recovery, I'm just going to continue to suffer and get worse?
Well, we all like to think that we are unique, right? We're all little snowflakes, and we, but the thing is that though each situation is different, there's variables. Overarching is that it's not unique. Everyone goes through something. So I like the proof is right in front of us. There is living proof of people that have come out of dire situations and not only just recovered and overcame it, but thrived. And then they turn around and they pay it forward, and they want to be that person for another person. And it's this beautiful ripple effect that trickles down. And advocates are born that way, right? Mm-hmm. So like I'm an advocate for families affected by drug addiction, but there's advocates that are in recovery that do have substance use disorder and are in recovery for X amount of time. So I think that just look around, because we like to think we're unique, but we're not, and we're all going through something similar. And people have come out of it, and the people that have come out of it, sometimes the situation was even worse than yours might have been, and they still made it out. The mental blocks are going to come. It's very hard to get out of your own head and kind of look around, but there are 22 million people living in recovery from a substance today, if we're just talking specifically about that, and now more than ever, there are people out there who want to help you, who are okay with open conversation. It's not this weird hidden subculture anymore for mental illness or drug addiction. So more than ever, there are people and resources out there that can help you get on that trajectory to recovery.
There's going back to the stigma or the shame of it, like that somebody maybe is ready to seek help or to find help to recover from that drug addiction or the alcohol. There's something minor that's going on in their life that's constantly plaguing their thoughts, that they're almost afraid to talk about it.
Right.
Family, friends, whatever, go into a church group or something like that and discuss it and realize that there are other people that are having issues going on in their life, that they're having their daily struggles, however small or large they may be. In your conversations with other people, or in your own opinion as well, what is the first steps towards maybe self-forgiveness or that I need to find help, or that it's okay to admit that I have a problem or that I have something that I want to seek help for?
So the first thing is admitting you have a problem. So when it comes to those with substance use disorder, a denial, the disease of addiction, it rewires your brain, and you'll think you're in control, even though you're clearly not. To like your loved ones around you, you're clearly spiraling out of control, but you will swear to God you're in control. And you have to release that control and be like, okay, I'm not in control. So admitting you have a problem is first. Language is so important. And I feel like from everyone I speak to, when they came out to their families with any kind of issues they might have had, language was key. Like if a family turned around and said some like slurs, say they called them a junkie or something like that, that might have them retreat back into themselves and not want to talk about it more and not get help. So I think understanding that addiction is a disease and understanding the language that goes around it is important, and you want to build people up and not break them down. I think that communication's two ways. So if I'm struggling with something, mental illness, eating disorder, drug addiction, and I come to you and I say, I'm struggling with this, and you're like, well, what's wrong with you? I'm going to say, oh, just kidding. I was just, forget it.
It's like that automatic judgment.
Yeah. And that's where the shame comes from. And usually the first people you do tell are your family or friends, those closest to you. And if those closest to you are judging you, one could assume that those who don't know you at all are going to be judging you worse. So if you're a member of a tribe, a family, or anything like that, you just have to be open and realize that like no one's perfect, and these issues do arise, and these diseases do arise, and they happen to good families. It doesn't matter who you are, it could happen. So I just hope people keep open minds, because that's what's going to save people.
And I think stigma may be a theme, for at least for now. I know we've talked in the past about the stigma with addiction. That if somebody's addicted to something and they're so wrapped into it that, okay, well, it was a choice. They made a choice at some point in their life,
right,
and they deserve to be in that spot, even if they want to get clean or if they want to find new
I hear
hope,
hear that all the time.
find a new life, turn over a new leaf and begin again. That there's something still associated with it. And it seems like no matter what the issue is, drug addiction, alcoholism, eating disorders, that there's that stigma associated with it, that you're going to be judged, almost like a leper.
Yeah.
That, okay, well, just because you have something going on in your life, or you have something you're trying to overcome, that means you should be in a room with just those people, and you got to figure it out yourself.
Not our problem.
Yeah, find your own recovery.
That's how I think
addiction is addiction. Yeah. It's not,
That's how I think we got into this. Is that everyone else was like, not our problem, fix yourself, or not our problem, it was a choice. And while some drug addictions form because of recreational use or experimentation, more times than not, there's a trauma or a mental illness connected to drug addiction because it's used as self-medication. They're trying to escape something, whether it be, if they were sexually assaulted as a child or any kind of trauma. No one wakes up one day and says, I want to live and die as a heroin addict. No one. So now more than ever, though, I see less of that compared to, I've been doing this work for 11 years. So I do see improvement, but there's still that whole thing where it's like, well, they chose to do this. And I'm like, but no one's looking into why they chose to do this. Like, do they have, a lot of people with bipolar disorder, they turn to drugs, escapism, anything like that.
And just because it was a choice and things escalated to really poor levels, drugs, alcohol, eating disorders, bipolar disorder, any kind of mental illness, just because maybe they made a wrong choice in life, that doesn't mean they should be condemned for that.
No, especially if they are self-medicating because someone else did something terrible to them, or something else terrible happened to them, and as a result they turn to drugs. I do believe addiction is a disease. I mean, I'm scientifically backed at this point, but there are many people still out there who do not believe it's a disease. And though it may start as a choice, especially with opiates, it completely reconfigures your brain, and you're never the same again. So you won't know how drugs will react to you because you don't know how it's going to, affect your brain. My reaction to it could be different than yours. You might become addicted almost immediately, whereas I might not. And it's a slippery slope for sure, because you don't know until you're using.
It seems, not to dive too much into politics, but this does deal with one issue that's seemingly more expected to be passed in New Jersey, the legalization of recreational marijuana.
Right.
And a lot of people are in favor of it. Oh, okay, because it'll help. Maybe they've found scientific evidence that supports a medical condition that is others, but there's also that side of it that it could be abused, that people are just going to say, oh, well, I need it for this thing, but I'm actually doing it for that thing. Or there's always going to be people out there that are going to want to find marijuana to smoke and just get high.
Always, yeah.
But I think there's this stigma or whatever associated with marijuana that, oh, well, it's just another drug. It's not a gateway drug. It doesn't lead to heroin abuse. It doesn't lead to opioids. It's just another drug. It's actually better than heroin, almost kind of saying that even though it's a drug, it's
not the worst kind.
There are worse drugs,
yeah,
so
it's socially
that makes
acceptable.
It okay.
Yeah, it's like more socially acceptable now. And while, again, it goes back to your own brain chemistry and individual basis. So has every person addicted to heroin smoked marijuana? Probably. But has every marijuana user gone on to become addicted to heroin? Probably not. No. But you never know. And will it bring billions of dollars into our state? Most likely, because it's done that for other states. My worry is what will happen on the street. Will other harder drugs be pushed more? Because, marijuana is available legally now. We'll going all the way to the cartel, like what is going to be pushed more on our streets, in our neighborhoods, if you could go and just buy it. And that's something we'll have to see. Another for people who may be in jail currently for minor marijuana drug offenses, like they've been sitting in jail. So what's going to happen with them? There has to be some kind of retribution for that.
And they're working on expungement that, okay, if this is passed,
Yeah.
And you got arrested for a small amount of possession or use that maybe the criminal record that's
right.
wiped
And
clean,
odds
but
are you could have a bigger charge and be stuck. But there are those few, I'm sure, that were just that, and they have it on their record forever. So, yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how this unfolds because I do think it will be legalized in New Jersey.
Do you think that could create an even worse problem for any law enforcement out there, any government official who's trying to curb a major drug problem, not just in Jersey, but in America, that it could become more of an issue that if marijuana is more legal, more available, that fighting a heroin and opioid epidemic, fighting a drug epidemic nationwide could become much more challenging if more drugs are legalized and available.
I always think back to did you ever see The Wire? HBO's The Wire? I recommend it if you haven't.
Yeah, okay.
But it's about the drug ring in Baltimore in the late 90s, early 2000s. So back when like burner phones and beepers were a thing. And the police chief, they couldn't get a handle. They were pushing heroin on the street, crack. They couldn't get a handle on reining in these drug dealers that were taking over their neighborhoods, like very violent. I don't know if you're familiar with the drug issues in Baltimore, inner city stuff. Mm-hmm. But the police chief creates this block radius where all the drug dealers could go and sell their drugs without getting in trouble, just to try to like isolate it to one area. And I always think back to that because when I was watching, I was like, that's ridiculous. What police chief would do this? But now when I'm looking at it and looking at the numbers, not that I'm advocating for this at all, it's just a hypothetical. I could understand now why the fictional police chief thought to pivot and try to rein in the problem another way, because every other way they were doing wasn't working, but I speak to a lot of police and almost all of them say now that the opioid crisis is not a law enforcement issue, that it's bigger than that. So I guess time will tell. They think it's more of a mental health insurance, ground zero disease type thing.
Getting back to recovery, but by the way, got somebody who agrees.
Oh,
good movie.
It's a show, but I love it. I mean, it was an accurate depiction of the drug epidemic in Baltimore during that time, and I recommend people watch it. Definitely. And then what is this? This jock reminds me so much of Matt. Is that you? Yeah, he's talking about you. Kathy, she.
Matt Devote? Sure.
Yeah. Actually, it is so much more. It is so much more than the law. More than anything, it's a national health crisis. I think, and we need funding. Experts are saying we need billions of dollars to combat the opioid crisis, and we've only really received millions, which is a drop in the pan. Yeah, every day, almost 200 people die from a drug overdose.
Despite the recovery options that are available, the support groups, the church groups that are trying to reach out and trying to get the word out more that come on in, mm-hmm. No matter what, we're on your side. No matter what else you may think or feel, so you got us. Do you think there needs to be more recovery options expanded or more funding going toward these groups that maybe put more people out on the streets or in certain spots that try to find people that are struggling? Maybe they go to hospitals or police stations and maybe try to work more with people who are mm-hmm. getting in trouble with the law, with drugs or alcohol, or somebody who has bipolar disorder getting into different assaults.
Just getting the help they need. So a lot of the people that are in the trenches, like fighting this opioid battle, a lot of them are volunteer groups or nonprofits. And that blows my mind. I mean, a lot of the nonprofits I work with are true not-for-profits where they are just volunteering their time. Every dollar they raise goes back to the cause, like the Hope Sheds Light Foundation mm-hmm. in Toms River. They're a wonderful organization here in Toms River, and they're doing things bigger for Ocean and Monmouth County. But funding is our biggest thing. We need more resources. We need more beds. When someone with substance use disorder becomes lucid and realizes they need help and they might be ready for detox and then rehab, when they make that call, a bed needs to be ready right at that moment. Because if it's not ready for a day or two, they might change their mind or be dead by then. And New Jersey is, thankfully, I'm so proud that I live in a state that is really progressive when we're combating this crisis. Because there are other states. I was speaking to a mom, her daughter and her live in like the Midwest, and they, you have to pick where your health insurance can cover, because a lot of parents can't pay $40,000 to send their kid to a rehab, or the user can't. And she messaged me and she said, my daughter finally wants to get help. She had been addicted to heroin for a while, 26 years old. And she's like, we're going to go find a bed for her. And I said, great, keep me posted. And she replied back and she said, our health insurance covers these rehabs, and they're only, they looked in like a 300-mile radius. That's a big radius to look in. And none of the beds were available for like 6 weeks or something like that. And she called me before those 6 weeks were up, and her daughter had passed away waiting to get into a rehab. And those are the messages that kill me the most, because this young woman wanted help and couldn't find it.
And there is a problem with being able to afford it through insurance.
There's
also like the problem that you touched on with having enough beds. It seems like there are certain centers, as much as they'd like to,
right.
Maybe certain centers they're stripped of funding, or they don't have enough, and there's not enough beds available, and there's not enough options available. So people who are in dire needs of getting clean, they don't know where to go.
Right, and
there's nowhere to go.
Some rehabs, not in our area, not in the, I don't even think the Northeast, but some don't even have a detox facility attached to them. So how are you going to put someone in rehab that hasn't even been properly detoxed off of drugs? And it's just the hamster wheel of just cyclical failing and recreating the cycle. And funding is one of the biggest things. I mean, I wanted this crisis to be declared a national health emergency, not a public health emergency, because that the difference in those words is funding, and it wasn't, and I was disappointed, because it's a national health crisis. It's not just here; it's international. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And you mentioned Hope Sheds Light before, an organization we're both very familiar with, based here in Toms River, and Steve's a great guy, and he does a lot of good work. I believe I had Mike, the Situation Sorrentino from the Jersey Shore in there
at the
recently.
Recovery Film Festival.
So how do you think that could help too, with maybe people who are battling a drug addiction, that maybe you'll feel more empowered to go seek help by seeing maybe celebrities, or even the comedian Artie Lang, who's had his own legal problems.
Still does.
He sent out a tweet the other day trying to summarize here that, look what heroin did to me. I said, I could have had it all. He's like, don't let this happen to you.
Right.
Just paraphrasing there, but just kind of these warnings are going out there that these celebrities, whether they're movie stars, TV stars, athletes, that they're finding themselves in trouble with. Not just heroin, some sort of other substance abuse, opioids, high school athletes getting hurt, college athletes, professional athletes
that's another way
being addicted to pain pills. So it's a lot of different issues to drugs or alcohol. That would you feel that maybe more of those people spoke out about their own personal battles, that maybe other people who, your everyday people, so to speak, would feel more empowered to maybe seek help for themselves?
Yes. Overall, like I said, the more people that speak out about their own personal experiences and how certain things may have touched their lives, I think it breaks down the veil of shame. The more people that talk about it, it's the whole safety in numbers type thing, power in numbers. But when someone of notoriety comes out and says, like, I'm a flawed human, I had everything and I lost everything, and I think that does help move the conversation forward. Mike, the Situation, say what you want about the Jersey Shore. I mean, I have my own opinion about the show.
The actual show is one thing.
But the fact that this man came out and became an advocate, I think that's pretty awesome that he did that, and that he's using his platform now to spread awareness about this disease and how quickly it could take over your life. And I just read recently, too, in regards to the mental health sphere, that Hollywood men are coming out and talking about their battles with mental illness, including, I think, Ryan Reynolds just came out and talked about it, I think. And though the headline read something like patriarchy, like Hollywood men are the reason that we're talking more about mental illness. I mean, I understood what they were trying to say. And yeah, when super successful, well-known people come out and speak about things, it humanizes them, but it also helps other people feel less alone, because if it could happen to them, it could happen to anyone.
Now, in the road to recovery, people trying to overcome an addiction. I mean, I've discussed it, with other, law enforcement. I think they've even discussed with Congressman MacArthur that sentencing, if somebody's arrested on a drug possession or a drug charge, or maybe they're found high, they're recovered with Narcan, instead of maybe going right to jail, would the better option be going to like some sort of mandatory rehab center? But the other part about that is, how do you determine how long that could be? Is that a year? Is that 5 or 10 years? Maybe there are people that maybe fall off the wagon 20 years after they've recovered.
Yeah, I mean, 25 years clean from an opiate, you still have like more than 50% chance or something of relapsing, which blows my mind. I'm split on this, because I think, and I know the law can't be this specific because there's so many people, mm-hmm. but I wish that we could live in a world, call me an idealist, where it could be an individualized basis, because though I do believe most drug dealers, especially the high ups that aren't using themselves, that are pushing these drugs to make money, mm-hmm. millions of dollars, maybe more, I do believe they belong in jail, incarcerated, because a lot of families are coming out now and trying to take these drug dealers to court for homicide, for killing their kids. I know in Ohio they're doing that a lot now. And but at the same time, I do think that some people selling drugs are selling it to support their habit, because they're just as sick as their clientele. And the thing with Narcan is, not many people realize this, is that when you're administered Narcan, you don't like wake up from your overdose and you're like, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine, let me go back. You wake up in like immediate withdrawal. Mm. So if you are not taken to a hospital, to a proper detox, and are convinced to to enter a program, you're just going to be back on the street using, because no one wants to be in withdrawal. And but to answer your question, I'm split with that, because I do believe that the law needs to come into play at times, because so many people are dying at the hands of these drug dealers and these drugs and fentanyl that we didn't even talk about. And but then also some are just as sick and need rehabilitation. Yeah, and a lot of people say, like, well, I don't want my tax money paying for them to go to rehab. Well, your tax money's paying for them to sit in jail with cable television and 3 meals a day. So, I mean, what difference does it make where they are?
And what about another idea of recovery, that if somebody is in rehab, whether it's mandated rehab or mm-hmm. they select to go and they're having trouble, so instead of somebody going to rehab and then leaving like a day later saying, oh, well, I'm done with this.
They could do that, yeah.
I'm sure people do and, yeah. and will, but that the family, the immediate family should be a part of that rehab process, that that it could be almost not like a family intervention or a family counseling that, and I know it's affecting you, that yeah. the disease of addiction affects more than just the user, that mm-hmm. the entire family could be brought in and that they could recover together. You think that something like that?
I don't know if they could. I think that the person that's actually battling the disease needs to have their own program, and there needs to be high intensity. And but I mean, I've become the poster child for families affected by drug addiction, and it's a crown I do wear proudly, mm-hmm. as sad as it is, because I've helped move the conversation forward. But I believe that families need recovery and assistance in their own recovery tenfold, no matter what. So if my loved one passed away, which she did, I needed to go on with my life and recover no matter what. So I'm happy to see more and more group family things, because there are more family initiatives, because many are realizing now that it does affect more than just the family. I mean, you could develop anxiety, you could develop insomnia, worrying about your loved one. I mean, I know I did, and I needed help, and I got it. So I do think, I don't know if a group thing with their loved one would be best, because I do think they need to be away, because it's a very sensitive time too, and you say things you don't mean, mm-hmm. and you don't want that, mm-hmm. Like I've been in a room with people where the families are just fighting and the kids got 2 days clean, and space during that time, I think, is important.
No, I know one thing you spoke about in the past about your cousin Jessica. I don't know, you've shared your story with so many of the people out there know that, she knew that she was in a lot of trouble.
Yes.
And that she kind of came to you and had that one conversation about her addiction.
Yeah.
I think shortly before she passed. Is there that signal or that light that maybe somebody's family members or friends should automatically recognize that maybe they should have a talk with them themselves, or try to encourage rehab, or trying to just encourage like a sit down and have a conversation, like, so that, people can recover and not, have to be,
Yeah, absolutely. There are signs and moments. I mean, my cousin came to me 6 weeks before she passed away, and she said, I don't think this is out of control. Like she said, it felt like a demon took over her body, and she honestly didn't think she was going to make it out. And I told her, like, you have to, and then we were younger. I didn't realize how quickly drugs can just, kill you.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know now, I replay the conversation a lot in my head, like what I should have said, but I didn't know anything then. She's the reason I know everything now. But the most important thing is identifying and accepting the fact that there is a problem. Because the quicker it's identified, the quicker you realize your loved one is using something, whatever substance it may be, the quicker you could kind of jump into action. Obviously, if they're a minor, you have more control. And it's crazy to think that minors would have these drug addictions, but a 12-year-old, I think in Cape May County, overdosed and died. A 13-year-old recently, an 8th grader, however old in 8th grade, in around Montville.
13, I guess.
Yeah, she just died. And these are young kids. I used to play with dolls then, these are young kids using heroin or pills or any other, opiate or drug. So just be honest with yourself. Don't think that it can't happen to your family. I think that's the biggest way we get in our own way, is think like, not my kid, not my family. And your kid, right? Your loved one, your sister, your husband, anyone, like, them. And drugs change them. At first you might not notice, but fairly quickly you will start seeing a difference, and you'll start realizing something's not right here. And that's when you have to come out right out and say it, whether you do it yourself or you organize an intervention with a professional third party. Those are available too. That could help. But sadly, if they're not a minor, I mean, they have to really want to get help for themselves at that point.
How do you encourage those parents or those family members, maybe especially those parents, to say, "Oh, not my kid. Nothing's wrong with him or her. Nothing will ever happen. They don't have a problem. They're just going through
through something. They're just teenagers." Yeah. I hear that so much, and depending on my mood, I react differently. But after speaking somewhere in Morris County fairly recently, I had a couple parents that were like, "We came, but this would never happen to my kid." And I, at that point I said, I know someone who's using right now who looks just like your kid. Like, it has nothing to do with how good of a parent you are. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing too. We put it on ourselves, right? Like, we failed them, and that's why it happened. But it has nothing to do with what kind of parent you are, what household you come from. It doesn't matter if you came from a broken home or a nuclear family. It doesn't matter your religion, your race, socioeconomic status. Like, it doesn't matter. And we need to kind of just check our egos at the door, because we're in the biggest drug crisis in national history ever, in in at least the last 20 years. When we first met, in the statistics, I think it was like 2015, 2016, 52,000 people died from a drug overdose, because the numbers were 2015. And then last year, 64,000 died. And now they're saying, and by last year I mean 2016, so we're always a year behind. And then in 2017 now they're thinking it's like upwards of 80,000. And then we're a couple months into the new year now, and we've already lost, just in New Jersey alone, over near almost 1,000, I would think, at this point, because a couple months ago it was at 600 something. Mm-hmm. It's the leading cause of accidental death for people under 50 in the nation. So don't tell me it can't happen to your family, because unfortunately it can. I pray it doesn't.
Right.
But statistics show that it could be likely. And I hate to be like the downer, but it's realistic. And the more you educate yourself and the more you realize that you can be affected by this, the more maybe we could help people.
Now, how do you put in some of that advice, some of those feelings that you have into, I hope my voice doesn't skip, and is it solely from your perspective, or was this a work where you got to speak to a lot of other people and see what their stories were?
So this is a poetry collection. So it's mostly from my point of view.
Okay.
But I'm an empath. And so when I hear people's stories, it resonates with me and it almost becomes my story too. So it might be in there, but I have a poem called Dear God, and it's me, or the narrator, talking to God and praying that they give this person that's battling this issue, whether it's drug addiction or what, you could place your situation into it. I pray to God that they give this person another chance because they have so much more to live, and give them one more day. A lot of it talks about grief, a lot of the work, and overcoming. I have one very specific one that's called This Isn't About the Number 6, and it goes on for like 5 or 6 pages. And it's about the time before, during, after, and years after losing my cousin. And it shows the ripple effect of not having one person in your life has changed all of this. I have one called The North Ward is the North Ward, and it's about my neighborhood in Newark and how, seeing people, young women that look just like me on the streets now, prostituting to support their habit and things like that. I'm not preachy. This is more, it will resonate with people. I'd like to think it's well written, but a lot of it is about overcoming, like your recovery. So even the darkest pieces have hope. Like, what did you learn from this loss? It wasn't all in vain. And I like people to think that if they lost someone in any way, that it wasn't in vain, that it was for possibly a bigger purpose.
And now, you have some songs in there as well. I mean, some actual links in the book as well. But I know I saw you came out with a song. I think it was back in November or December. I think that's on Spotify.
Yeah, the first song. So this book is designed like a vinyl record, and and so it's split into the EP and the LP, like how vinyls were EP, LP. So in the LP section, it's my longer poetry, and there's 9 songs. So they read like poems, but then you're going to be able to follow a link and go listen to a properly recorded song. So in November, I released Hope with Ada Pasternak, who is, her family has been affected by the drug crisis as well. And Hope is literally what the song's about. It's about, like, one of the lines is, all of this hard won't break my soft. What is gone is never lost. And it's about no matter what you go through, there has to still be hope. And she did a beautiful job recording it. And it's not, drug addiction specific, but everyone who knows me knows what inspired that. And the beautiful thing I like to think about this book is that it covers a myriad of topics, and you'll be able to place yourself in it depending on what you went through. I mean, there's falling in love poems, there's love poems, there's loss of love poems, there's grief. So they'll definitely be able to see themselves in it. But there's 9 properly recorded songs that 8 different musicians did. So one musician recorded 2, and Ada's was the first one. And just last week, I released a song with Carly Maffa from American Idol. And
very nice.
Yeah, she'll be with me tonight at Barnes & Noble in Brick.
Okay.
I'll be doing a reading and signing of this book, and it's backwards, so.
That's right. Yeah. We'll get it up.
Yeah,
people got it.
And Carly Maffa is actually from Nashville. She's from New Jersey. She lives in Nashville now. She's from way south New Jersey. And she did pretty great on American Idol, I think top 25. And she wrote a poem in this book with me and then recorded it. And she'll be at Barnes & Noble at 6 o'clock in Brick today. And she'll be performing that song, but also two or so of her original songs. And yeah, this was a true collaborative project. It took me 2.5 years to write.
Wow.
which in my world is forever. A lot of my peers released like 2 or 3 books since I released my first one, but I wanted to take my time.
All your updates.
Yeah. So I can't believe it's out today. It doesn't seem real because I worked on it for so long. But
and the book's out today on Amazon.com?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, but it's also in stores. So yeah, if you go to any store that sells books, you should be able to find it.
And the music is, where can people go for that?
The music, so if you buy the book, you get the music and the links.
Okay.
I don't want to give that away because I want some people that buy the book to like have a little special
Buy the book.
So, but 6 of the 9 songs are already on Spotify because they were released by the artist.
Okay.
And I have a playlist. If you go on my social media, you should be able to find it. It's the Alicia Cook. And yeah, I'm so excited because I just had this idea one day where I was like, I wonder if I could write music. I wonder if I could get actual people who could sing to sing this music. And it just all came together, and I'm just so proud of this project.
You didn't want to sing in it?
No. No. My family will thank me for not singing, I'm sure, on it. But I got to work with some awesome people, and I think art is better when it's collaborative, just like being an advocate for the drug epidemic. I'm fine on my own. I do my thing, but it just is a whole other level when I come together with Congressman MacArthur or, with different teachers or school districts. It just becomes more powerful when you're working together with someone. What
are some of the other? I know we've talked a lot about drug addiction and a little bit about eating disorders and alcoholism, but what are some of the other topics or that are covered with your poems in this new book? Different things that people can relate to.
Trying to go to the table of contents. Current social issues. So I remain bipartisan in this. It's not a right-wing, left-wing book or anything like that, but I speak about what women go through. Like just yesterday, it's still happening. Like the Me Too movement is wonderful, but it's still happening. Just yesterday, I was walking back to my car from the gym, and about a 3-minute walk, because I live in a city and there's nowhere to park. And a 3-minute walk, I was getting hissed at and whistled at to turn around by this one guy that just was walking like 5 feet behind me the whole time. And just things that we experience as women that don't seem real because it's 2018 and you think, how could this still be happening? There's one poem called 10 Little Girls that is very dark, but a true reflection of the time. There's a trigger warning on that poem because it talks about sexual molestation, rape, unwanted pregnancy, murder, overdose. It literally talks about everything that we go through. Breakups, makeups, love poems, the normal poetry stuff. But I also talk about addiction, as we said, anxiety, mental illness, depression, family. I would say time and nostalgia are the 2 big characters in the book, but I talk about family a lot. I'm very close to my family, and I understand that I'm lucky to say that. But yeah, I talk about that, and there's just a ton. I talk about mass shootings. I wrote one piece after the Vegas shooting, and it made it into the book. Okay. So yeah, it just touches on current social issues, but also the stuff that unites us all, like love, loss, family, grief.
And is this the kind of book that people can read through these poems and maybe then listen to a song, or is this something that they're going to have to slowly read through and that maybe they can relate to? So what is, I guess, the best way to make sure they read this book and that they understand what the message you're trying to get out? Right.
Well, when the book went out for early reviews, some people were able to sit down and read it in a sitting. Other people wanted to take their time with it, but because it touches on sensitive topics, I do stress self-care when you're reading the book, because there could be moments that are triggering. I do have trigger warnings in the book for certain pieces. Okay. Especially, you could relate to it, but there's a difference between relating to it and having lived through it, and maybe I don't want to trigger someone and have them go back, God forbid if they were raped or anything like that. Right. I don't even like saying that word because I feel like it could trigger someone. So it depends on the person, but I always say with anything, practice self-care, read it as long as you're comfortable. Stop reading it if it's uncomfortable or if you don't like it. I don't take anything personally. And yeah, so it really just depends on the person. But I was reading some early reviews and they said, you know, they had to take a break. It didn't take, you know, it was still a great review, but they did mention that they had to take a break given the content.
What are your final thoughts on, I hope my voice doesn't skip, book out today that people can go out and get and, I don't know, enjoy is probably not the right word, but be able to reflect on?
I do think they'll find enjoyment in it. I mean, as much as this is a current reflection of what we're all going through as a human race, there is hope. I mean, the whole overarching theme of this book is that recovery from anything is possible. You can overcome whatever it is you're going through. You know, I do believe you can. I mean, we are so resilient. The fact, I've been through so much sometimes where I think, like, how am I still standing here? But I am. And I mean, a lot of people, most people have had harder lives than me and or went through worse, and they're still here. So it's a testament to how resilient we actually are. Like, we don't realize how strong we are. But I hope that whoever does pick up my book enjoys it and does take stuff away from it. And I hope that if they're going through something, it helps them cope. Like how I listen to music to cope, I hope people find my book and do the same. And it's out everywhere now, and I'm going to show the cover again.
That was my next follow-up.
Like, there we go.
There we go.
And it's so cool. It feels, if you can touch the cover, it feels like an actual record.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
it feels nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'll be at Barnes & Noble in Brick tonight at 6 o'clock. And if you are a normal human being, I hope I can meet you. Not some people that private message me on Instagram. I don't want them to come, but no, seriously, the more the merrier. And Carly Maffo from American Idol will be joining me at 6 o'clock tonight.
Excellent. So you could find more information. Amazon.com is where you can find the book.
Yep.
You could follow Alicia on Twitter and Instagram at the Alicia Cook.
The Alicia Cook across the board. Yeah.
All right, Alicia, thanks for the time. Thanks for
you.
coming back and sharing more about your book and everything else going on. I appreciate
it. Thanks for always being interested in what's going on with the drug crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, I would rather talk about that than my book, ironically. So I appreciate you're always well informed.
Thank you.
No problem.
That's Alicia Cook. I'm Vin Ebenu. For more on her book and other things going on outside the newsroom, head over to WOBM.com, and that's where you can find all this information and much more.
Great.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.